kill me, or take me as your husband." The words came from a pony, quiet as dust, but they hit like a gunshot in the still air. And Rhett Vance would carry that moment with him long after the sun slipped behind the ridge. By the time Rhett reached the far stretch of his land, the day was already bleeding out into gold. Dry grass shimmered under the fading light, and long shadows crawled across the earth like slow-moving ghosts. This was the hour he favored most, the calm before darkness settled in. The fences stood silent. The cattle had gone still. Only the wind moved, dragging dust along and carrying the faint cry of distant birds. He'd ridden this line 100 times before, checking posts, mending wire, tending to the kind of work that filled a man's life without asking questions. He wasn't expecting company. Then he saw her. Near a cluster of weather-beaten trees, a lone figure stood, motionless. At first glance, he figured it was an animal, but then it shifted. A woman. She didn't flinch, didn't step back, didn't try to hide. That alone was enough to set something off in Rhett's mind. Out here, folks kept their distance, especially women on their own. He slowed his horse, then brought it to a stop a few yards away. She looked worn down to the bone. Thin, wrapped in dark clothes that had seen too many hard seasons. Her hair was pulled back without care. Her face, it held no fear, only exhaustion, and something deeper, grief that had settled in and made a home. She spoke before he could. Her voice was level, empty almost. "Kill me, or be my husband." Rhett felt the air catch in his chest. For a second, he thought he'd heard wrong. He stared at her, searching for some sign, mockery, madness, anything to make sense of it. But her eyes didn't waver. They were steady, clear, heavy with pain. This wasn't a threat. It wasn't a joke. It was a plea. Slowly, Rhett swung down from his horse, careful with every move. He'd lived long enough to know how fast things could turn bad if you rushed them. "What's your name?" he asked. "A pony. Your family." She shook her head. None left. An Apache widow. Her husband, Dakota, had died months back. And after that, everything else had followed like a trail of falling dominoes. Protection gone. Land gone. Safety gone. She'd tried to make it on her own. The world hadn't allowed it. People passed her by like she was nothing. Some threw harsh words her way. Others looked at her like she didn't belong anywhere at all. "I'm tired," she said. Not just in body, but deep in her soul. Each morning came heavier than the last. She didn't want to keep running, didn't want to beg, didn't want to wait for something worse to find her. "So I choose," she said softly. "I don't wait anymore." The weight of it settled over Rhett like a storm rolling in. He wasn't a cruel man, but he was a practical one. He knew the land, knew the law, knew exactly what kind of trouble a choice like this could bring. Marriage wasn't just words. It bound lives together in ways that didn't come undone easy. It would draw eyes, stir whispers, invite judgment. "I can't answer you yet," he said. A pony gave a small nod, like she'd expected nothing else. "I'll stay here," she replied. "This is all I have left." Rhett reached into his saddlebag, pulling out food and a canteen, setting them down for her. Then he rode off. But something followed him. Something he didn't recognize. He'd seen hardship before. Helped folks when he could. But this wasn't the same. This was a choice that would change 2 lives, not just one. That night, sleep wouldn't come. The wind rattled against the walls, but it was her voice that stayed with him. The way she stood, upright, unbroken, not begging on her knees but demanding to be seen. He turned the thought over again and again. How does a person reach a place where death and marriage feel the same? Morning came, and he tried to bury it in work. But it followed him. Every fence post, every stretch of land, every quiet moment. He saw her in his mind, standing alone at sunrise, waiting. By afternoon, he made a move. Not a final answer, just a step. He packed supplies and rode back toward those trees. She was still there, hadn't moved. When she saw him, she didn't smile, didn't speak, just watched. Rhett handed her the supplies. "I'll make sure no one bothers you, for now." He chose his words carefully. Not a promise, just time. They talked longer that day. Slowly, piece by piece, Apache told him about Dakota, a man strong but kind, a man who believed in honor even when the world offered none. She spoke of the red sky people, of customs rooted deep, and of the quiet pain of being pushed aside, like she'd become invisible. Rhett didn't interrupt, didn't tell her what to do. He just listened. And that alone surprised her. He gave her more silence than words, and somehow that unsettled Apache more than anything else. Most men she had known never listened. They spoke over her, told her where to go, how to live, what to become. But Rhett Vance did none of that. He just listened. And that, more than kindness, felt unfamiliar. As the sun sank low again, bleeding into the horizon, Rhett finally spoke. "I'll come back." He didn't say when, didn't offer an answer, but he didn't turn his back on her either. That mattered. When he rode off, Apache stood there watching until he disappeared into the fading light. She couldn't tell if what she felt was hope or just another slow step toward the same end. Back at the ranch, the air had already begun to shift. Whispers reached Rhett before nightfall. Someone had seen him out by the creek. Someone had seen who he was talking to. Questions followed fast. He could feel it building already. The weight of attention, of judgment pressing in before anything had even been decided. Helping her wasn't going to stay quiet. That night, Rhett stood outside beneath a wide, open sky, staring up at the stars. The land stretched endless around him, but his thoughts felt boxed in. He kept turning over the choice she had laid at his feet. Not just her fate, but his own. He knew the truth of the world they lived in. Kindness wasn't something it rewarded. Not out here. But turning away. That came with its own kind of cost. A quieter cruelty. One a man had to carry inside himself. Miles away, under that same sky, Apache sat alone. She didn't pray, didn't cry, didn't beg the world for mercy. She waited. For the first time since Dakota died, she had placed her life in someone else's hands. Not because she was weak, because she had nothing left to lose. Both of them understood the same truth. Whatever came next wouldn't be easy, and neither of them could step back from it now. Morning came without warning. Soft. Quiet. But Rhett woke with a weight already pressing on his chest. Her words were still there. Echoing. He splashed water on his face, pulled on his boots, and stepped outside. The land hadn't changed. Still wide, still open. But something felt different. Like the ground beneath it all had shifted just enough to throw everything off balance. As he crossed toward the barn, one of the dust riders glanced at him. Careful. Measured. The man hesitated, then spoke. "Folks in town are talking." Rhett said nothing. The ranch hand went on anyway. "They saw you out near the old creek, with her. No need to say her name. They're asking questions." Rhett gave a slow nod. That was all. He already knew where this was heading. Helping someone like a pony wouldn't be seen the same by everyone. Some would call it trouble, others would call it foolish. Either way, it wouldn't be ignored. Later that day, Rhett rode into town. The moment he tied off his horse, he felt it. Eyes, watching, following. Conversations slowed as he passed. Voices dipped. Silence filled the gaps. At the store, Cal Brewer leaned on the counter, speaking like it didn't matter. "You been riding near the old lands lately?" Too casual. Too careful. Rhett gave a short answer and moved on. Outside, Jed Turner caught him before he could leave. "You'd be wise to stay out of things that ain't yours," Jed muttered. Rhett met his gaze, calm. "I'll keep that in mind." Then he mounted up and rode out without another word. On the ride back, anger stirred in his chest. Hot, sharp, but beneath it, something steadier. Resolve. He had spent his life following rules set by men who never bled for them, never suffered under them. Now he found himself questioning if those rules deserved anything from him at all. By afternoon, he was back at the trees. A pony sat on the ground, her hands working strips of dry grass, weaving them into something simple. She looked up as he approached. There was surprise in her eyes, but not relief. She had learned too well that kindness didn't last. Rhett stepped closer. "Town's talking," he said plainly. "They're watching, asking questions." He didn't soften it, didn't try to protect her from the truth. She listened in silence. When he finished, she gave a small nod. "I know." Her voice didn't shake. "The world was never gentle with me, not before, and not after." She paused. Being alone only made it worse. Rhett studied her for a moment. "Why stay?" he asked. "Why not go find your people? Start somewhere else?" A pony's hands stilled. "Running already took everything from me," she said. "I won't let it take what's left." There was no anger in it, just certainty. They spoke until the sun began to fall again. Rhett noticed something then. Her strength wasn't loud. It didn't come from force. It came from stillness, from knowing exactly who she was, even after everything had been stripped away. Before he left, he looked at her. "I'll speak to someone, a man I trust, knows the law." He paused. "I won't forget you." Not a promise of answers, but not abandonment either. Days passed. Rhett rode out to find Silas Crow, a man known for fairness, not comfort. Silas listened, then gave his answer plain. "Help her, and you'll draw trouble. Marry her, and you'll draw more." He didn't raise his voice, didn't judge, just laid the truth out where it couldn't be ignored. "People will question you," Silas added. "Some won't stop at questions." Rhett nodded, thanked him, and rode home carrying more weight than he had before. Every road ahead looked hard, but doing nothing, that felt worse. While Rhett wrestled with his choice, a pony faced her own. One evening, a group of men rode past her camp. Brock Hale, Wade Cutter, Duke Rourke. Their laughter cut through the air, loud and careless. Their eyes lingered too long. They didn't touch her, didn't need to. Their presence said enough. Out here, safety was thin, and hers was thinner than most. That night, a pony didn't sleep much. She didn't move, didn't run. She stayed exactly where she had chosen to stand, and waited. When Rhett Vance rode back the following day, he noticed it right away. The tightness in a pony's stance, the way her shoulders held something heavy beneath the surface. He didn't question her, didn't press. Instead, he stayed. He lingered longer than before, moving along the fence line, fixing a broken post, tightening loose wire. He worked where she could see him. Quiet, steady. Out here, protection didn't always come from a gun. Sometimes it came from being seen, from making it known someone wasn't alone anymore. As the hours passed, the distance between them began to thin. Their words came easier now. She asked about him. Not the land, not the work. Him. Rhett hesitated at first, then answered plain. He told her about losing Thomas Vance and Mary Vance when he was still young, about building everything he had with his own hands, 1 post, 1 acre at a time, and about the silence that came with it, the kind a man learned to live with, even if he never truly filled it. Apache listened. Then, after a while, she spoke. "Asking you to choose my fate," she said quietly. "It wasn't easy." Her gaze dropped for a moment. "It was the last thing I ever wanted, and the only thing I had left to do." There was no shame in her voice, only truth. As the day stretched on, pressure crept in like heat before a storm. Later, Wade Harper rode out to the ranch. His tone stayed polite. Too polite. Questions came wrapped in courtesy, but each one carried weight beneath it. Rhett answered without hesitation, calm and measured. But he could feel it. Patience was wearing thin. That evening, as the sky darkened into deep blue, Rhett rode back out again. He stopped near Apache's camp. But this time he didn't dismount right away. He sat there, studying her, really seeing her. And in that quiet moment, something settled in him. This wasn't just about whether she survived. It was about who he chose to be. He finally spoke. "I don't have all the answers yet." A beat passed. "But I know this. I'm not leaving you to face this alone." Apache closed her eyes briefly, like she was holding something back. When she opened them again, there were no tears, only strength. Quiet. Unshaken. Between them, the air felt heavy with everything still unsaid. Both of them knew. The hardest part hadn't come yet, and the world was already watching. The change didn't come with noise, no declarations, no grand moment. It began in silence. One morning, Rhett arrived earlier than usual. This time he didn't stay in the saddle. He tied off his horse, walked over, and lowered himself to the ground a short distance from her. That alone said more than any promise. He wasn't passing through. He was staying. At least for now. "Town's getting restless," he told her. "Some think you don't belong on this land. Others think helping you'll bring trouble straight to my door." His voice stayed steady. Not to frighten her. To prepare her. Apache sat with her hands resting in her lap, listening without interruption. When he finished, she spoke simply. "I've lived under pressure my whole life." She lifted her gaze. "Fear isn't new to me." A pause. What matters is respect. That word stayed with him. In the days that followed, Rhett stopped thinking and started acting. He gathered the dust riders, speaking clear and direct. "The woman out by the old creek is under my protection." His eyes moved across them. No jokes, no talk, no trouble. A beat. "Anyone crosses that line answers to me." Some nodded, some shifted where they stood, but no one challenged him. After that, he made sure his presence couldn't be missed. He rode near her camp often, worked fences closer to her ground, stayed visible, deliberate. It didn't take long for people to notice. Whispers turned louder, then louder still. One afternoon, Eli Boone pulled him aside. "They're saying your name in places it don't belong," Eli warned quietly. Rhett gave a small nod. "Let him talk." Another man stepped in later. "Helping her's gonna cost you," he said. "Might not be worth it." Rhett met his eyes, calm. I'll decide that. And he kept going. Then one day, he did something different. He brought a pony to the ranch. Not inside the house, not yet. Just the open yard. He wanted her to see it, to feel it, to understand the life he had built. She moved slowly, taking it all in. The animals, the tools, the wide sky stretching above everything. She didn't ask questions, didn't reach for anything that wasn't offered. That restraint, it struck him. They spoke plainly that day. No careful edges, no avoiding truth. Rhett looked out across the land. If we do this, he said, it won't be quiet. He turned back to her. You'll have protection. But you'll have eyes on you too. People watching. Waiting for mistakes. He didn't soften it. Out here, mistakes don't get forgiven easy. Aponi held his gaze. And for me, she said, it would mean safety. A pause. But more than that, dignity. Her voice didn't waver. I won't live as a shadow, or something hidden. Another step closer. If I stand beside you, it will be as someone who has a voice. That was when Rhett understood. She wasn't asking to be saved. She was asking to be seen. That night, the decision came. Quiet, certain. The next morning, Rhett rode into town. And when he spoke plain. No excuses, no arguments, just truth. Rhett didn't raise his voice in town. Didn't argue. Didn't try to convince anyone. He simply said what needed saying, and stood on it. That alone stirred the room. Some men looked at him like he'd lost his sense. Others kept their anger quiet, buried just beneath the surface. And a few said nothing at all. That silence carried more weight than words. It felt like respect. When he rode back to Aponi, he didn't circle around the truth. I'm ready, he told her. His voice was steady. To stand beside you, out in the open. A pause. Not out of pity, not out of fear. His eyes held hers, but because walking away from this would be something I couldn't live with. Aponi didn't answer right away. She stood there, turning toward the open land, letting the wind move across her face. Her eyes closed. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she spoke. If I agree, there is one thing. She turned back to him. You don't own my spirit. Her voice stayed calm, unshaken. You don't erase who I am. Rhett didn't hesitate. Never. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Their decision didn't bring peace. It stirred something. The air around them shifted. Neighbors who once nodded now looked away. Others watched from a distance, measuring, waiting. Still, no one stepped forward to challenge him. Not yet. Life moved forward, slow and uneven. Aponi began helping around the ranch. Not because she was told, because she chose to. She worked carefully, patiently, every movement deliberate. And over time, even those who doubted her couldn't deny what they saw. Between her and Rhett, something began to take shape. Not love, not yet. Something quieter, stronger. Trust. Built from shared silence, shared work, shared understanding. They learned each other in small ways. Rhett learned when to speak, and when to hold his tongue. Aponi learned that once Rhett gave his word, it didn't bend. One evening, as the sun sank low and the land turned amber, Aponi spoke again. There's something I didn't tell you. Rhett waited. When I came to you, I didn't expect marriage. Her voice softened, just slightly. I expected death. A pause. I had already said goodbye. To life. Rhett nodded slowly, then answered just as plain. Your words forced me to face something I'd been avoiding. He looked out across the land. Living safe, without ever taking a stand. His jaw tightened. That's just another kind of emptiness. They stood side by side as the last light faded. No promises spoken. None needed. They both knew. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but neither of them had any desire to turn back. Some choices didn't leave room for that. Life didn't get easier after that. If anything, it grew heavier. The work stayed hard, the days stayed long, and the eyes watching them never disappeared. But something had changed. They weren't alone anymore. Apache moved onto the ranch little by little. Careful, measured. At first, she kept to the outer edges, helping where she could, stepping back when she wasn't sure. She didn't try to reshape anything. Didn't push. She watched. She learned. She followed the rhythm of the land and the people who worked it. Some of the dust riders kept their distance, spoke little. Others watched with quiet curiosity, and a few surprised her. A tool handed over without a word. A place made at the table. A shared meal eaten in silence beneath the shade. Apache accepted it all the same way, without reaching, without asking for more. Rhett noticed everything, but he didn't interfere. He believed something simple. Respect couldn't be forced. It had to grow. Days turned into weeks, and Apache proved herself the only way that mattered. Consistency. She rose before the sun, worked without complaint, learned fast, animals, repairs, the land itself. Step by step, she found her place in it. People began to see it. She didn't chase attention, but she earned it anyway. At night, when the work was done, she would sit beneath the open sky, watching the stars. Sometimes Rhett joined her. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they didn't. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It belonged to both of them. Then one evening, trouble found its way back. Not loud, but heavy. A knock came at the door. Eli Boone stood outside, uneasy. "They're asking again," he said. "About the land, about what this means, moving forward." His voice lowered. "Pressure's building. Folks ain't gonna wait forever." Rhett gave a nod. "Appreciate it." He closed the door behind him and felt it again. That weight. Old. Familiar. This was the part people never saw when they judged from a distance. He stepped outside, found Apache near the fence, adjusting a loose post. He told her everything. Didn't soften it. Didn't hide it. She listened. Carefully. Then she smiled. Not wide. Not joyful. But calm. Steady. "I expected this," she said. "Change always brings resistance." Her eyes met his. Fear speaks loud. A pause. But it doesn't always win. Her steadiness settled something inside Rhett Vance. It didn't erase the pressure, but it gave him ground to stand on. A few days later, the trouble crept closer. Not loud, not reckless, quiet, deliberate. A gate left swinging open where it shouldn't be. A tool taken and never brought back. Small disruptions, easy to overlook, but too precise to ignore. Messages. Not spoken, but understood. Rhett didn't wait. He gathered the dust riders in the yard, his voice cutting clean through the air. "We don't play games here." Silence followed. "If there's a problem, say it out loud." His gaze moved from man to man. "But anyone stirring trouble behind my back won't be staying." No one stepped forward. No one argued. And just like that, the small disturbances stopped. Not because everyone agreed, but because they understood him. Through it all, something between Rhett and Apache grew stronger. Not fast, not loud, but steady. Trust built in the space between hard days and shared burdens. They began to understand each other in ways words couldn't reach. Rhett saw her strength clearly now, not in bold defiance, but in quiet endurance. Apache saw his strength too, not in control, but in the way he never wavered once he chose a path. One afternoon, they worked side by side under the open sky. The sun hung high, the air dry and still. And Apache began to speak, not just of loss, but of everything that came before it, her childhood, the traditions of the Red Sky people, the things she had carried with her, and the things she had been forced to leave behind. She spoke of grief, not as something that broke her, but something that reshaped her. Rhett listened, like he always did, without interruption, without judgment. When she finished, he stood quiet for a moment. Then, slowly, he spoke. "I built this life, alone." His eyes stayed on the work in his hands. Thought that was strength. A breath. "Truth is, I was afraid." He finally looked at her. Afraid of losing something that mattered. Apache gave a small nod. She understood that kind of fear, more than most. As the season shifted, something else changed, too. Not just for them, for everyone. The ranch began to feel different. Apache was no longer spoken of as trouble, no longer the subject of whispers. She had become part of the place, as natural as the land itself. One evening, after a long day's work, they sat down to a simple meal. The light was soft, the air still. No tension, no weight pressing in. Just quiet. Apache looked at him. "I don't feel like I'm waiting anymore," she said. For the end, Rhett felt something tighten in his chest. But he didn't answer right away. Some words deserved time. Out beyond them, the land rested under the last of the fading light. The future was still uncertain. There would always be challenges. But something had changed. They weren't just getting through each day anymore. They were building something. Something that could last. The final shift didn't come with noise. No celebration. No clear moment anyone could point to. It came like morning light, slow, steady, undeniable. By the time people noticed, it was already done. Apache wasn't a stranger anymore. She wasn't passing through. She wasn't waiting to disappear. She belonged. Her steps had worn into the paths of the ranch. Her hands had shaped its work. Her presence had settled into the land itself. Steady, rooted, real. Rhett felt it too. His days no longer moved by habit alone. They carried meaning, weight, purpose. He started noticing things he used to overlook. The way the earth smelled after rain. The quiet ease of sharing a meal. The strength that came from not standing alone. Even the dustfall folk began to shift. Slow at first. A nod where there had once been silence. A greeting where there had once been distance. Not everyone approved. But it mattered less now. One morning, Rhett rode into town, a pony beside him. They weren't there to prove anything. Weren't there to challenge anyone. It was simply time. They moved through the streets calm and steady. No tension, no apology. Some watched, some whispered, but no one stepped in their path. They handled what needed handling. Quiet, direct, papers signed, words spoken plain, and nothing left uncertain. Nothing about it was loud, no spectacle, no moment folks could point to and say, "That's when everything changed." And that was the truth of it. What Rhett Vance and Apache had built didn't need noise to prove it was real. When they rode back to the ranch, something in the air had shifted. Lighter, easier. Not because the world had changed, but because they had. Apache stepped out to the edge of the land, letting her eyes travel across the wide stretch of earth. Once, it had only been a place to survive. Now, it felt like something else. A future. That evening, they sat together as the sun dipped low. The land glowed under a warm, fading light, quiet, steady, like it had always been there waiting. Apache spoke first. "There was a time I thought my life ended when Dakota died." Her voice was calm. "Everything after that felt like borrowed time." She let out a slow breath. "But now," she looked out across the land. "It feels like it belongs to me again." Rhett listened, then gave his own truth, just as plain. "I used to think strength meant standing alone." His hands rested loosely in his lap. "Thought if I cared less, I'd lose less." A pause. "But I was wrong." He glanced toward her. "Strength ain't about shutting things out." His voice lowered slightly. "It's about choosing to care, even when you know it might cost you." They didn't speak of love. Didn't need to. What stood between them wasn't built on words like that. It was built on something steadier. Respect, patience, trust. And because it had grown slow, it held strong. Seasons turned. The ranch didn't become easier, but it became fuller. Alive in a way it hadn't been before. Apache's laughter began to surface more often. Soft at first, but real. And Rhett, he found himself smiling without even noticing when it started. Hard days still came. They always would. But they faced them side by side now, no longer shaken by what others thought, no longer held back by fear of loss. One day, a traveler rode through. Harlan Pike. He paused long enough to ask the question folks had been wondering for a while. "How'd she come to be here?" Rhett didn't hesitate. "She chose to stay." That was all. Simple. True. And enough. Apache heard it, and something settled deep inside her chest. Warm. Steady. For the first time in longer than she could remember. She wasn't defined by what she had lost. She was defined by what she had built. At night, beneath a sky that stretched endless and wide, they would sit together. Sometimes they spoke of the past, sometimes of what might come, and sometimes they said nothing at all. Silence now wasn't empty. It was peace. The words she had once spoken, "Kill me," or "Be my husband," they had sounded like an ending, a final line drawn at the edge of everything. But they hadn't been. They had been a beginning, not because fate had shifted in some grand, sudden way, but because one man chose something different, chose compassion over comfort, chose courage over distance. Rhett hadn't saved her. He hadn't pulled her out of darkness. He had walked beside her, step by step, and together, they had reshaped what the future could be.